What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Alex Cuesta Show. How is everybody doing out there on this Wednesday, January 3rd of 2024? And I said it right, January 3rd, damn it. Welcome to the new year. It is 2024. Nothing major has happened yet. Well, no, actually it has. We had that semi-Epstein release, I guess, that
just
kind
happened.
of list that just happened, but not really a list, just people that are mentioned on a lawsuit. So I don't know. It's whatever that is. But everyone, I hope you had a safe and happy new year. I hope you didn't get too drunk. And if you did, you stayed where you were. We're going to have a great one today. For some reason, in this new year, David is still on the show. Why are you here?
It's unfortunate. It really is. But I am here and I'm feeling pretty good right now. I'm not sick anymore as I was last week.
You're here, you're queer, and you're ready to make some
That's untrue. That's completely untrue.
So today we're going to have a good time. If you like what you hear, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5-star, Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth. Go find us on the socials at the Alex Cuesta Show. First, before we jump into this week, I want to talk real quick, as I always do. Last week's show, we had a fun one. Dalia Al-Akidi came on. She's running for Congress against Ilhan Omar over in Minnesota. She's someone that definitely go give it a listen. Support Dalia because she's important. We need to take Ilhan Omar out of here. She sucks. She's anti-Semitic. Don't like her very much. So we need her gone. So go give your support to Dalia. Definitely go back and give that a listen. And before we jump into our guest today, he might have comments on what I have to say, but I have to talk about what has been going on recently on X. Now, we all know X is not real life. Twitter is not real life. But
I was gonna say it's not X, it's Twitter.
The Twix. Twix is not real life. But things that go on there do have real life effects. And recently, Seth Weathers released his basically Hot Women on the Right calendar to promote his ultra-right conservative dad beer. And the collective Puritan Right lost its freaking mind and went after, I think was the most random one, out of the ones that were posted, right? Riley Gaines is in a swimsuit, a two-piece, but she's commonly in a swimsuit. Actually, St. Clair, probably the most risque looking photos, but they go after Josie, the redheaded libertarian, who is wearing a sundress, apron, and has a pie with her leg out and a cross in the background. I think that's crazy. I don't want to go crazy about it, like getting into it, but the Puritan Right kind of drives me nuts. And it went further because then they went after Isabella Maria DeLuca for baking a cake in a tight-fitting shirt showing no cleavage, and she is well put together. Dave, I know you are all about these discussions, but what is your opinion? And you can't say no opinion. Don't be a dumbass. What is your opinion?
I mean, I really just genuinely don't care. I'm not going to lie to you. I just don't care. This isn't a conversation that I necessarily want to go about. Mainly, it's not even for like any apprehension. I just have other things that I like talking about.
So do you hate hot women on the right like some others do?
No, I mean, I feel like that's a bit of a misnomer.
You hate hot women on the right showing themselves being hot in non-scandally clad ways?
I will say, because there are the religious arguments, which I am not a theologian. I'm slightly religious, I would say, because I'm hard on myself about that stuff. And I will not speak to those because I do not know those well. But I mean, there are also arguments about why is the camera pan in that direction when you're baking a cake? Understandable critique of why exactly the cake isn't the focus of the shot. But I mean, it's the internet. There's thirst trapping everywhere, which I'm not surprised of. So I kind of just gloss over it because it's just a normal thing you see all the time for me.
So I do want to get into the opinion of our guest, and let me introduce him. I'm super excited to have him on. He's somebody that, Dave got into LawTube before I did, and he was starting to tell me about all the LawTube guys. And this is one of the gentlemen that he was like, yeah, this guy's awesome. He tells it how it is. He really doesn't give a shit what anybody else kind of says. He knows what he knows, and he lets you know what exactly is going on. He is attorney Andrew Branca. He's in his fourth decade practicing law and with an exclusive focus, making his law self-defense community hard to convict if they're ever compelled to use force to defend themselves, their family, or their property. Definitely go look up law self-defense on YouTube and on Twitter. He's a great follow and subscription. What is going on, Andrew?
Oh, living large, man. Life is great. Life is great. Every year is better.
So let's jump in. What is your opinion on have you seen what's going on X with all this?
Sure, of course.
What is your opinion?
I've made comments on it on Twitter too. I think it's very funny. Now I should say I don't know these women who are in the calendar. I mean, I know them from their presence on Twitter, but I don't know them personally. I've never had any kind of professional interact. I understand one of them works with Tim Pool, and I've been on Tim's show a couple times, but I've never met her or interacted with her.
Yeah, Josie's more of like a personality with them. She kind of writes for them at times, but she's like loosely affiliated with them in a way. Like, yeah,
and they're all attractive women, right? Yeah. So I'm a normal heterosexual guy. If attractive women want to present themselves as attractive, if they want to present themselves as whores on the internet, it's okay with me. I don't care. I like looking at pretty half-naked girls. If that's what they want to, if they want to give that away for free to the whole world, I'll look. It's right there. You can't hardly avoid it. So I don't have anything against any of these women on any kind of personal level. I don't care. I would say from a public policy perspective, I think there's a difference between how single women should portray their sexuality and how married women should portray their sexuality. I think single women have license to be much more sexual, mini skirts, the whole thing, because they're trying to attract, presumably, a husband, right? A partner for life. Yeah. Married women, in theory, have locked that dude down. So why would they be going out into the world presenting themselves in a hypersexual way when they have a husband at home, maybe children at home? And the reason is because women are evolutionarily wired to be desperate for attention from all the men all the time. Yep. That doesn't make them bad people. It's just the way women are wired, and for good reason, right? Because in human history, they had to have a man there to provide for them, to protect them, or they would be at the mercy of any other man who came along. Even if you lock one down, if you lose him, you have to be prepared to get another one. Yep. So I understand why women are desperate for attention, but I think it's a bad thing for families when women continue to act like they're single when they're married in a hypersexualized way. Because if a woman presents herself to the world as, hey, I'm something you should sexually objectify, well, men respond to that, and men will give her that attention. And if you give a woman enough of that attention, every marriage, I've been married twice for a total of 26 years. I can tell you marriages have ups and downs. And if a woman's in a low spot in her marriage and she starts getting a lot of hot attention from a dude, that's where the cheating comes from. And when American women at least get divorced, 80 to 90% of the time, it's the woman filing for divorce. And that is absolutely catastrophic for those families, especially the children. But for our society. So I would, if I were giving my daughter advice, I would tell her, look super hot when you're trying to nail down a husband. And then when you're trying to nail down a husband, look super hot for him, but not on the internet.
Yeah. And I think that's fair. And, one thing I have to say, I don't know all the women in this calendar. There's some of the women that I really am not familiar with. But the ones that I am that are married, I think are presenting themselves not hypersexualized. Like I said, Josie is in a kind of like a sundress with an apron. Dana Lash has freaking guns and she's fully clothed. She just looks like a badass.
She's just in a t-shirt. Oh, I forgot Dana was in there. I do know Dana.
Dana's personally in there.
Dana and Chris, I do know.
And even like Kim Klacik, Kim Klacik's in a dress. Like it's not like super short. Like, it's for me, it's like when I look at it, and the ones that are kind of a little more risque are your single ones. So I think it is kind of in the realm of what you're saying.
I think there's really kind of three zones of dress, right? There's the super conservative, like I'm Amish, right? Yeah. The dress up to the neck, long sleeves. No one would say that was sexualized, even though the woman could still look very attractive, right?
They might have hot eyes. The hot eyes.
Whatever. They've got hips.
Yeah, they don't lie.
But I would say that would be, super modest dress, right? That's on one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, we all see these broads on TikTok that just present themselves as whores. It's nothing but cleavage. The entire frame is cleavage and their chin, and that's it, right? So I would say that's hypersexualized. And then I think you have the middle zone where it's kind of, I think, reasonable people could differ on how sexualized or not. Frankly, for single women, it doesn't matter. They should be in that zone, right? Because they're trying to attract a man. For married women, I would tell them to ask their husbands. And I know that'll drive women crazy. Ask my husband for permission on how to dress. I can tell you, I wouldn't let my wife dress super slutty out in public. That's not going to happen. And it wouldn't be an issue for us because she doesn't want to. But I wouldn't allow it.
Yeah. And I feel like most women who are happy in their marriage don't want to do that. They rather be modest out in public. And they still, just because being modest doesn't mean you don't have to be attractive, right? Because if you're a woman, and some women are just attractive naturally, even if they're wearing modest clothing. So it's like, but
if you take an 8, 9, or 10 woman, it doesn't matter what you dress her in. It could be a potato sack. She's still going to be super hot.
Exactly. So I just want to get your opinion on that. And as always, you did not disappoint, Andrew. So fantastic. So,
but I don't care what they do personally. I think it is funny sometimes when, listen, I don't blame them. If my assets were a big rack of boobs, I would use that to advance my profession too. I get it. But when they pretend that's not what they're doing, I think that hypocrisy is laughable.
And I'll say this. I think the thing about Maria DeLuca, she doesn't pretend that she doesn't use her hotness to get her further. Like, she knows she puts those pictures. I think what she was kind of saying, like, this is the one you guys choose. Me baking a cake fully in a t-shirt, like, yeah, you're focused on my boobs and my face, but this is like my least scantily clad one. And this is the video you're focusing on. I think that was more of her thing, like, guys. And then I think Rachel Wilson posted up a bunch of hers in like bikinis and things like that. And she's just like, okay, you did my job for me. I look awesome. Like, it was kind of, the interactions are fun.
I will say the whole thing has the feel of being the new thing. Like every week or every day, we have to have the new thing to distract us from what's really happening in the world, because there are important things happening that are completely destructive to our society. So instead of talking about things like the actual devastation of inflation, housing costs, the reproduction rate going into the cellar,
pedophiles throughout every single powerful asset of everywhere that we have.
Everywhere. Mm-hmm. And if you have ever, I'm not a powerful person, but I have friends who are powerful people, or have been around powerful people. And they've told me my whole adult life that this stuff is rife in those circles and always has been. But we don't want to talk about any of that. Instead, we want to talk about the TNA of a calendar. Now, I guess there is stuff to talk about there. We just did. But on the scale of what's important in life, it's hardly hearing the lamentations of their women.
Yeah. No. And the thing is, it's like, the culture war is obviously important, because the right has been losing the culture war to the left now for 40 years, at least 40 years, when the left started to really hypersexualize on TV, right? Sex sells. I feel like that is a lot of directors and stuff from the left that were pushing that. They're not wrong, because the sex and violence is what sells on TV. But it's kind of like,
well, I think pick and choose our
right battles with that.
Right. I think a difference between conservatives and liberals is conservatives, honest conservatives, would say, everything in its place.
Yes.
Right. So sex is great. Conservatives have sex too.
Yeah.
But maybe not in schools with elementary school children. Everything in its place. And the liberals just say sex, we got to have that. No limits, zero limits. If the moment your kid comes out of the womb, he gets a trans doll. Which conservatives would say is insane. And we have social norms and kind of standards of behavior in society. And it's not often clear why we have them. Why can guys go to the beach without a shirt on and women can't go to? It sounds sexist, right? And there's a what would I call it? An allegory, a doctrine called Chesterton's fence. I'm sure you've probably heard of it. And the idea is that there's a fence in the middle of a field, and a liberal comes along and says, well, I don't see any purpose for this fence. We should just tear it down. The conservative goes, well, I don't see any purpose either in the moment. But someone put the effort in to put this fence in, and it probably was not for no reason. So maybe we should figure out the reason before we rip the fence out.
And and the terrifying thing is, you were talking about how leftists are very much like, oh, sex from the womb. The only thing you need to know is that a lot of leftist theory is kids aren't kids. They're just little adults. That's really how they think about them, little adults. So it tells you all you need to know about why they support what they
treat women like big kids.
They do, and
that's what feminism does.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, they try to turn them into men too. It's treating them like children and trying to make them men. That is their goal. So I want to jump in. This was a great aside, a good way to start the show. But I want to talk about you, Andrew. You have your channel.
Love it.
You have, your goal, I guess, is to try and educate the masses on what is the law of self-defense and how it applies to us, right? So what is your expertise in use of force and use of force law?
Yeah, so as far as I can tell, I am the national expert in use of force law. There's no other attorney in the nation that has a law practice exclusively focused on use of force law. By use of force law, I mean defense of yourself, defense of another person, defense of property. Of course, there's many thousands of criminal defense attorneys who will occasionally argue a self-defense case, but they have a diversified criminal defense practice. They do DWIs, they do shoplifting. They do all the things. Self-defense would be a very small part of that.
Yeah.
And my practice is exclusively, I don't do any of that other stuff. It's use of force law only. And it's unusual in part because, well, most of the cases I work on are what I would call good guy cases of self-defense. I mean, most claims of self-defense are, do we curse on the show or not? I'm not sure
we can curse. Yeah,
most claims of self-defense are utter bullshit. Yep. They're bad actors. They're criminals who committed a violent act against someone, and their lawyer raises the legal defense of self-defense because that's what you do as a lawyer. But the facts are so poor and inconsistent with self-defense, they're easily defeated. Yeah, those tend to be inherently different, weaker cases than good guy cases of self-defense, which good guys tend to act in within what they think are the legal boundaries. They're often wrong, but they're trying to do it right. At least they're not bad actors. They're not acting with malice. Yeah. And so the facts I tend to be much more robust than you would get in a typical self-defense case. But I can tell you, in my 3 years of law school, we spent maybe 5 minutes talking about self-defense law. That was it. They just don't teach this stuff in law school. And there's not many forums that really teach it at all, even after law school, even like in continuing legal education. So most lawyers out there, I mean, if they're not a criminal defense lawyer, they have no reason to know this stuff anyway, right? If they're doing real estate, why would they know any self-defense law? But even most criminal defense lawyers, they have a lot of experience with bad cases of self-defense. But it's almost like a football team that has a lot of experience getting to the 50-yard line, but never scoring a touchdown because their bad guy cases of self-defense collapse quickly. Yeah. Very few lawyers, when I talk to normal criminal defense attorneys and I ask them, hey, you've been practicing for 30 years. How many good guy cases of self-defense have you had where you genuinely believe that was a good actor? They'll tell me 2, 3, 4 over a 30-year period. And as you can imagine, it's hard to get good at something you only do 2, 3, 4 times a year. Yep. So my practice is unusual. I don't take clients directly, so I don't represent people in court. My practice is a legal consulting practice. So someone acts in what they think is self-defense somewhere in the country, in the U.S. or its territories. They get charged with a crime for the use of force. They retain local lead counsel to represent them. And that lawyer is my client. So I consult on that case for that attorney.
That's pretty awesome. So what made you want to get into this field? Because obviously you said you spent 5 minutes in law school. There's obviously a robust amount of things you could do in law. We have a cousin who's a lawyer. He's a real estate lawyer. You know, it's like he does that. Like,
great, make a lot of money.
They make a ton of money, but there is a ton of different avenues you can go in law. What made you interested in getting into self-defense law? Was it kind of something where you saw a niche that needed to be filled and something you can go, or is this something that truly like interests you to get into it?
I realized that I was an idiot. I've been a member of the gun community my whole life. When I was a kid, like 9 years old, I was shooting small bore rifle competitively, 22 caliber rifle competitively. And as an adult, I was shooting pistols. I mean, my whole life since I could legally do so. And even though I was living in Massachusetts at the time, believe it or not, today, like every state has some kind of concealed carry permit. Yeah. Not 30 years ago, my friend. It was a handful of states. And ironically enough, Massachusetts was one of them. Yeah. So I had a concealed carry permit. I'm going to all these pistol matches and going to gun shows and going to gun stores. And my community knows me. They know I'm a lawyer. And they're like, hey, Andrew, would it be lawful for me to use my gun in this situation or that situation? But like I said, law school didn't teach me this. And I was like, holy crap, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know the answer to that question. And I'm walking around with a gun on my person. And I don't actually know when I'm allowed to use it or not. And it terrified me. So I thought, you know what, I better learn what the law of self-defense really is. And there were no good resources for it. Wow. There were no textbooks on it. Yeah. So I had to go to the law library and do primary legal research on self-defense law for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I did that. But if you've ever lived in the Northeast, you know, Massachusetts is a very small state, right? You drive 30 minutes.
We're Jersey boys. I live in New York right now. So yeah, we understand that.
So you drive 30 minutes in any direction, which you do all the time to go shopping or shoot a pistol match or whatever. Suddenly you're in Vermont or New Hampshire or Connecticut or Rhode Island or New York. And I thought, well, I better learn those states' self-defense laws too, because I'm in those states all the time. So I did that. And when I did that, I realized, of course, they all have their own statutes, court decisions, jury instructions, and they all use different words. But I realized the underlying legal principles were really the same. They were using different words to say the same things. And I thought, oh my God, if this is true of New England, I wonder if it's true of all the states. So I did primary legal research on all 50 states. And sure enough, it turns out all 50 states have the same basic principles underlying the law of self-defense. And that really just reflects how old self-defense law is. I mean, of course, the United States got its law from England. England's been around forever. And of course, self-defense law is really, you may have heard the phrase natural law, which is kind of academic to people, but it's really the law of nature. And if you think about it, even animals defend themselves when they're attacked, right? It's as natural a law as you could possibly have. We had the same basic principles of self-defense law for the ancient Greeks and ancient Romans. And so because it's so well established, that's why it's, I would say, 80% the same across the 50 states. And because it's so similar, that's what makes it possible for me to have a consulting practice as a lawyer that I can apply in all 50 states.
You know, I feel like that's awesome. And that's something that, you know, you kind of, I feel like a lot of this stuff goes this way, right? It's very organic. Like you did it out of personal necessity of wanting to be you know, good self-preservation, right? You
and to answer other people's questions and not look like an idiot.
You're the guy with the handgun and a law degree, and you're like, well, shit, I have no idea what the fuck that is. Like, so it's like, so obviously, yeah. So, and you're trying to protect yourself as a gun owner, because we do know you walk into New York City with the pistol on your hip, you're screwed. It's draconian. You can't have one there, which is unconstitutional, but I digress. But you know, it's something that fills a niche, and it is bizarre that with all the lawyers, with all the people that we've had, like there's millions of lawyers in the country, right? None of them have decided
millions too many.
Yeah. None of them have decided to take the steps you have, even in a, I guess, minimal way, right? Because this...
nobody does it because it's too much work. So most lawyers are licensed to practice in one state, right? So they know whatever their expertise, real estate, finance, wills, criminal defense, whatever it is, in one state. Sometimes you'll find a lawyer, like if he works in the New York metro area, he may get admitted in New York and New Jersey and Connecticut, just for obvious reasons. But any more than that is super unusual. And so nobody does 50 states, but I had to sacrifice things. I developed a very deep level of expertise in a very narrow silo. So technically, I'm allowed to represent clients like any other lawyer. I'm still an active member of the bar, but I would never be lead counsel on a case today because it's been a couple decades since I've been lead counsel in court. And those guys have to worry about a lot of stuff that I don't have to worry about, filing motions, all kinds of stuff. So I have a very deep level of expertise, but in a very, very narrow silo. And that turns out to be very complementary to criminal defense attorneys who have a very broad level of expertise, but not as deep.
Yep. So and for a lot of people on the right that like has a fear of experts now, right? Dr. Fauci has definitely given us a fear. Andrew's a good expert. If you're on the right side, if you're a bad guy, he's probably not someone that you want. But if you're a good guy,
it is funny because we get inquiries all the time for consults on cases, and I say, well, tell me about it. And they tell me about it. And I'm like, I can't take your money.
That guy's guilty and I don't like him.
I mean, I guess if I was a bad lawyer, I would take the money and then I would give them an answer they didn't like, but I'd just tell them, listen, I can do the legal analysis if you want, but you're not going to like the answer. And then I'll feel like I stole your money. So
and one thing, anyone listening right now might be hearing like, he says all this, he wants to do good, but he's probably just another guy that wants us to subscribe to him and give him money. Well, let me tell you this. Andrew's a little bit different because I will post this along with our link, but you have a free self-defense book that you offer out to people, correct? So, you probably could make a shit ton of money off of this if you were just deciding to make this $5.99. Something this valuable, just making, a reasonable price. You decided to make it free. Why did you make it free?
Because I do love money, but I'm smart. So we make money off these books, even though they're free. The reason is when people buy the book, they read it, they like it, they want to learn more about what we do. They watch our stuff on YouTube, they watch our stuff on Twitter, they see we're offering a course, they see we're offering a membership, and they don't have to buy any of that. They still get to keep the book for free. That's fine. But enough people who get exposed to our expertise, we think of the book as a fat business card. So the more people that get exposed to our expertise through the book, some fraction of them are going to buy our DVDs or our courses or our memberships or our platinum service or whatever. And that's what makes it a profitable business. We don't lose money on the book because of that financial dynamic.
So it's like
in the overall picture, the book not everyone who gets the free book does anything. Most people don't do anything. And that's fine. That's fine. Keep the book. It's awesome. But enough people do that it's a viable business model.
So in a way, like help yourself by getting the book and potentially help Andrew if you're more interested. That's kind of where it goes. And I think that's it's an awesome model because it does show that you actually care about this subject though, too, right? Because you're okay with somebody just taking the book, reading it, getting out of it and being like, cool, maybe I'll subscribe to
Look,
his YouTube and not buy anything, but it still
the
helps
truth
with the
is
subscription.
the free book is probably 70% of what they need to know. So if they stop there, I mean, they're 70% better off than they were before. It's not a bad position to be in.
Yeah.
Our community, our Law of Self-Defense members, the people who take our courses, they're the other 30%. They're the people who care sufficiently about this. They want more. We're not looking to take money from people or try to, convince or trick people into giving us money. We only want people to give us money if they think they're getting adequate value back for it. So we give the book away for free. That covers 70%. If that's all you need, you think you need, that's fine. I'm not going to tell you otherwise. But the people who feel they'd like a little more, we have lots of options to get more.
So without giving away too much free advice, because we want people to go and subscribe to and listen to your things and do all that. If you're the layperson and you're listening right now and you're just like, okay, this sounds great. When is it okay for me to defend myself? What would be your general answer to them? When is it an appropriate time for you to use self-defense and how much, what is the appropriate level of self-defense?
Okay, so you can use force, generally speaking, in self-defense when you're facing an unlawful, imminent threat of some kind of bodily harm. You can use deadly force in self-defense, like a gun or a knife or a baseball bat, if you're using it to cause serious injury, when you're facing an imminent, unlawful threat of deadly force. And deadly force, importantly, means not just force that can kill you, but also force that can cause you serious bodily injury. So a broken bone, blinding, loss of consciousness, rape, all those things, even though you don't die from those, they qualify as a deadly force threat against which you could use deadly force in self-defense. More abstractly, though, people can understand self-defense law pretty easily. It's really not complicated. There's not 500 things you need to remember. There's not 50. There's only 5 components to a claim of self-defense, and they are innocence, imminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonableness. Innocence meaning you were not the aggressor. Obviously, society doesn't want the aggressor to be able to claim self-defense. Yeah. Imminence is the idea that the threat you're defending yourself against is either actually occurring, you're getting beat, or it's immediately about to happen. The fist is back. You don't have to wait to get hit, but it can't be a past threat that's over, and it can't be a speculative future threat that might never actually occur.
Yep.
Proportionality has to do with whether or not we're talking about a non-deadly force threat or a deadly force threat, because that determines how much force you can use in self-defense. If it's only a non-deadly threat, you can only use non-deadly force in self-defense. You can't use deadly force in self-defense unless it's a deadly force threat. Avoidance is the biggest element that varies among the states because it involves whether or not there's a legal duty to retreat before you can use force in self-defense. There's only 11 states that impose that legal duty. So only 11 states require avoidance. New York and New Jersey are 2 of them.
I know I'm in one. You can't even defend your own damn house. You have to leave first. It's stupid.
No, you don't. That's not true. You don't have to leave.
Oh, thank God.
No, every state has castle doctrine, but castle doctrine gets kind of complicated.
Gotcha.
And then reasonableness, the 5th and final element, is kind of an umbrella element that sits over all the others, right? So everything you perceive, you decide, you do has to be reasonable, meaning 2 things. Meaning you had a subjective, genuine, good faith belief that you needed to act in self-defense. If even you don't think it was self-defense, it wasn't self-defense, right? So that's pretty obvious. But that's how a lot of bad guy cases of self-defense get blown up, because by their conduct, you can tell they weren't actually in apprehension of unlawful harm. They were starting the fight, for example. But the other half of reasonableness is objective reasonableness, meaning a theoretical, reasonable, and prudent person in your circumstances would have shared your beliefs. So a genuine good faith belief in the need to act in self-defense, however genuine and good faith, is not by itself enough. It has to be reasonable. If it's irrational, if it's speculative, if it's because you've been drinking a lot, that doesn't fly. It's not a sober person would not have reacted the same way. Then it's not self-defense. So the key with those 5 elements, the good thing is there's only 5, right? Yep. The bad news is they're cumulative. So everyone is required, unless like you're in a stand your ground state, then you don't have avoidance, right? It's legally excused. But all the ones that aren't legally excused, all the ones that are required are required. So if any one is missing, you don't have a claim of self-defense. So what that effectively means is those 5 elements are targets for attack for a prosecutor. Yep. And if he can defeat any one of them, any one, the whole house of cards comes down.
So a quick question for, like, say the layman, say you get in a situation where you have to defend yourself, it is you meet all 5 of those requirements of self-defense, but now you have to interact with the police officers. Now, obviously the police reports have a lot to do with law cases, right? Like the way they break things up. What should you say or not say in these situations to police officers? Because sometimes you say the wrong thing. That's how you get riled up. If you have a good lawyer, it might be able to help you out. But, you can kind of incriminate yourself even if you're innocent. And I think we've seen that before sometimes in law.
Absolutely.
So what should you or shouldn't you say in it? Like, say you get into a fight, it's a defense case. The guy tries to hit you, you whoop their ass. The cops come. You both get arrested because you got into a fight, whatever. What should or shouldn't you say in that situation? Should you just remain silent and only talk to your lawyer? Like, what is the situation there?
So I teach an 8-hour class on law self-defense, and an hour of that is interacting with the police. So it's a complicated subject.
Give us like the 5 to 10 minute truncated version of that.
Yeah. So one thing I would caution people about is everyone feels like if I acted in self-defense, surely everyone will be able to see that I acted in self-defense. I'm a law-abiding person. I've never been in trouble with the law a day of my life. Mm-hmm. You were there. You were attacked. You defended yourself. You know what the reality is. But guess what, folks? What you think the reality was does not control your legal outcome. The people deciding your legal outcome, the police, the prosecutor, the judge, the jury, guess where they were not? They were not there when you were attacked. They have no personal knowledge of what happened, right? So all they can do is look at evidence that's presented to them and try to arrive at a verdict based on that evidence. But evidence, I said self-defense law is easy, 5 elements, not that complicated. The real world is super complicated. Yeah. Evidence is often ambiguous. Witnesses are often uncertain. Sometimes they're lying. Yeah. So you were attacked, you beat a guy. Well, did you beat him too much? Did you beat him a little too much? Because what happens then is maybe your first couple punches were perfectly lawful, but the next couple were a crime.
Now it's not reasonable or proportional.
Mm-hmm. Right. And now because people don't know that, and this is especially a problem in good guy cases of self-defense, because good guys want to explain why what they did was not a crime. The cops show up. They want to say, officer, that shithead attacked me. That's why I beat him up. Mm-hmm. But the trouble is that cop is not your friend. He's not your enemy, but he's not your friend. He's ambivalent about you.
He's a neutral arbiter just trying to uphold the law.
At best, he's a neutral arbiter. Yes. If he's not subject to political pressures or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, in Portland, you're kind of screwed if it's a certain demographic. And you're a certain demographic.
Well, unfortunately, it shouldn't be this way, but we live in a racially energized country. So absolutely. The race shouldn't matter. But it does matter. Mm-hmm. Yep. And politically energized cases, it's almost like you have a healthy person and then you have that same person with cancer. They're not the same. Right? You have a healthy trial. You have a trial that's racially energized. It's not the same. Not at all. They're just not the same creatures, and they have to be dealt with differently. But the rules for self-defense would be the same. I mean, if you violate one of those elements, it doesn't matter what the racial energy is, because it just wasn't self-defense. I mean, you just handed an easy conviction to the prosecution. The general rule for criminal defense attorneys is they don't want their clients saying a damn word to anybody. Now, partly that's because listen, if you're a criminal defense attorney, most of your clients are criminals, and most of them are not very smart. And you definitely, if you're a criminal, for God's sakes, don't talk to the police. All right? Nothing good is going to happen to you from talking to the police. Good guy cases of self-defense, sometimes people feel differently. They feel, I'm the good guy, I can explain this. But if you start blathering away, you have no idea what you might say that could be incriminating. Yeah. Or even if the cop who's taking notes is writing it down the way you said it, or is going to remember it the way you said it. Maybe you used a word that's, has an ambiguous definition that the prosecutor could portray to a jury, meaning, oh, he meant this in a malicious way. And you're like, no, I didn't mean it that way at all. That kind of stuff happens all the time. And a lot of people, when they start talking, they can't stop talking, especially after stress. And if you're
nervous, your adrenaline's going.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Zip your lip or blather, you got to zip your lip. Yeah. Now, having said that, if you're a person who's serious about if you're a member of the law self-defense community and you follow my shows and you hear me talk about these cases and you've read the book and you've taken the course, I would say you have perhaps a professional perspective on this issue. For the professional, there's an alternative approach to blather or say nothing. And that's what I call the say little approach. And the little is only stuff you're going to have to say anyway, like your name.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to know that anyway, right? That you defended yourself. You're going to be claiming that in court anyway, but not a lot of detail.
Yeah, like
I had to defend myself.
Yes, he attacked me. I defended myself.
Period. That's it.
Yeah.
And the key thing is, if there's evidence, exculpatory evidence. So some guy comes at you with a knife and you shoot him and the knife goes sliding under a car and the police show up. You need the police to get that knife, right? If they don't know it's there and it disappears, well, that knife was why you shot the dude. Your criminal defense attorney is not going to think you're a genius because you let the knife disappear. So I think to the extent there's exculpatory evidence or witnesses, that I would want to point that out, but only to the responding officers. Once we're talking detectives, you never say a damn word to detectives because only bad things can happen from that. You don't say anything. People always say, don't say anything without your lawyer present. And I'm like, why would you be saying anything with your lawyer present? I mean, you let your lawyer do the talking.
Yeah. And let your lawyer advise you on everything at that point. So another question, in modern times, everybody videotapes fights, right? Nobody breaks them up anymore. Like no one has any balls to get in the middle. They just want to see someone get their ass beat.
It's not balls. It's a fool's game. The system, it gives no benefit of the doubt to people who intervene. I mean, just look at Daniel Penny, right?
Yeah. So we'll talk about Daniel Penny a little bit later, because I definitely want to get your perspective on that, which has been out there, but I want to get it here. But so with these videos, do these videos sometimes help people that, if like we see these at football stadiums all the time, there's arguments and somebody throws the first punch and now the other person is defending themselves. And is there something there like where the escalation, even though there was a heated debate and a heated argument, there shouldn't have been physical altercation? So does is that sometimes helpful as evidence to somebody who got attacked, or is it not as helpful as maybe we think it would be?
It depends on what's captured on the video. If you did it right, that's what the video is capturing. And if you did it wrong, that's what the video is capturing. So generally speaking, in good guy cases of self-defense, they tend to get into trouble not because there's too much evidence in the case. Because if it's a good guy, the evidence tends to be favorable. And you want more evidence, so you have more favorable evidence.
Yes.
It's where good guy cases of self-defense tend to get into trouble is when there's too little evidence in the case. And it begins to look uncertain whether or not your story of self-defense is true because there's no supporting evidence. There's only your word about it, right? Yeah. So that's the general rule. There is one cautionary note, and you guys might remember the McCloskeys in St. Louis. They went out on the front lawn with a couple guns.
A terrible picture of them. They was the most
terrible video and images, right?
Yeah.
One of the problems they had was they did not have any of their own video footage. All the video footage came from the mob. And so the mob got to edit it.
Yep.
Only the worst parts were exposed to the public. For all we know, there's video footage of the McCloskeys saying, hey, we're just defending our home. We don't want to hurt anybody, but none of that comes to light when the video is owned by your enemies, right? They only release the stuff that looks bad to you. So we got to be a little bit cautious about that. But in general, I mean, people ask me, should I get a body camera? Should I get cameras on my car? And you can do all that, but it's only helpful if you did it right. It's not helpful if you did it wrong.
Yeah, that completely and totally makes sense. And if you want to know how to do it right, you want to know what's wrong, go law self-defense, go to one of those courses that Andrew teaches and go join the community, because I'm not going to make him spill all the beans here, because then that will make going to his things pointless, and we're not going to do that here. We would like to have him have more success.
There's too many beans to cover in an hour anyway, so don't worry about it.
That's fine. So I have another question. So I've been hearing lately, Glenn Beck program specifically is promoting this product from a company named Byrna. Are you familiar with Byrna and the kind of overpowered airsoft pistols and rifles that they sell?
Yeah.
They claim that they're legal in all 50
Their CEO sent me a very nasty letter.
Oh boy. They claim that they're legal in all 50 states, and they have a New York and California package. Somebody who maybe doesn't like firearms, right? Would you recommend that they get something like a Byrna firearm just as a means of some sort of protection that's non-lethal?
So there may well be circumstances in which the Byrna is a reasonable idea, especially in states where it's very difficult or almost impossible to carry an actual gun. You have to defend yourself somehow, right? Like my entire adult life, I've carried a gun. So when I think about the Byrna, I start by thinking about it from my perspective, right? Would I get one. And I would never get one. And part of the risk for me that I see with the Byrna is they've made it look exactly like a real pistol. And so when you pull it out to any bystander, you're pulling out a real gun. They're going to perceive it as if they don't know it's a Byrna. It looks exactly like a Glock 19 or any other similar pistol. Yeah. I know they have some that are orange, but they make them in black. Mm-hmm. And even if it's orange, if someone points an orange gun at you, are you just going to assume it's not a real gun? I mean,
no,
I wouldn't.
And for police officer purposes, they see you holding that is a gun.
They will not give a damn what color it is. I guarantee you.
They will not.
So I'm not sure that private citizens should either. So imagine, for example, some guy gets out of his car in the parking lot where you just parked, and he thinks you cut him off down the road. He's really pissed. He's going to give you a piece of his mind. He starts shoving you, right? Physical force against you. Well, that's a simple battery. You're allowed to defend yourself against a simple battery, but not with a gun. Only with non-deadly force. So maybe you have a canister of pepper spray on you. So you take out your canister of pepper spray, squirt, 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 and he decides he doesn't want to shove you around anymore. Great. That was a successful outcome. But what if you pull out a Byrna, which fires the same chemical component as the canister, but to everyone else, it looks like you're pointing a gun at this dude? What that would look like to me, if I were watching, is that this dude shoved you, and now you're about to kill him. And that's not lawful. And a lot of, there could well be an armed citizen there who says, oh, my God, he's about to murder someone over a shove. I'm going to stop that unlawful killing, pulls out their real gun and shoots the guy with the Byrna. And that would be absolutely lawful. Yep. Now, he was wrong about it being a real gun, but you're not required to make perfect decisions in self-defense. You're required to make reasonable decisions in self-defense or defense of another, as in this scenario. And to me, that would be reasonable. I mean, when you bring that black Byrna into a courtroom, every juror is going to agree that it was reasonable to perceive that as a real pistol. Now, if Byrna made their products in a shape that didn't look like a gun, I'd be a lot more comfortable with it.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that a big factor if they made it, maybe even
because
if
then it can't be misperceived, right? Yeah. There was a company.
Maybe they had like specific colors that weren't black. Like if it was like only straight up orange or fluorescent green,
the shape is so tough. The shape is so tough.
And the thing is,
there was a company, I think Taurus, the pistol company, actually made a pepper spray container that was a kind of a weird lozenge shape with a hole in the middle for your finger. And I don't remember what its advantages were supposed to be, but my point is it looked nothing like a pistol.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of their selling point, that it does look like a pistol. And like
I think it's part of their marketing.
What they're going for is they want it to be something that a gun owner, someone that likes guns, would still want to carry it around, right? I think that is kind of what they're trying to get to. And I think the concept behind it is cool, right? A non-lethal alternative. I live in New York, right? Governor Hochul has made it damn near impossible to carry a weapon. You could still get a concealed carry, but every single place is considered a special place. Sure. Like you can't, if you pull out your gun in New York State, regardless, you're going on trial and you probably going to jail, period. That is what's going on in New York. A Byrna is like an alternative for someone like me in New York, where at least there's the argument's sake of, yes, it looks like a firearm, but it certainly isn't, right? It's an overpowered airsoft weapon that fires tear gas and pepper spray pellets. So it's like, it's a cool concept, but I do agree with you in the sense that they should differentiate it. And the fact that they market the pistol, they market an AR-15 style, like it does get into that dangerous realm. Like you said, if you're in Montana, if you're in Texas, if you're in a constitutional carry state, you pull out a Byrna, like you said, another good guy with the gun might say, whoa. That's not, they got into a fist fight. That's not a lethal force.
In fact, we just said, why don't people intervene anymore, right? We want good guys to intervene in what they reasonably perceive to be an unlawful act of violence. But if they do here, it'll be a tragedy, right? They'll be shooting someone who didn't need to be shot. And again, with all, I don't want to say Byrna has zero application. I just see this huge danger of misperception. I can imagine people who have edge cases where it would be an appropriate platform. But what concerns me, I think there's a lot of people who may not either be able to get a real gun or they're uncomfortable with real guns. And because this looks like a real gun, they're buying it as either an ego replacement for a real gun. You know how it feels and looks, and it's kind of a pretend real gun. And they're not considering the risks involved. Now, if they are considering the risks and they make an informed decision, I don't tell people what to do. I would never tell people not to buy Byrna. I just want them to do it in an informed way.
I agree with you. And I think, I think the burner product's cool. And I've said before, I wouldn't mind having them as a sponsor because we don't have any, but still, I think what they do is
Oh,
pretty
you shouldn't
cool.
have had me on.
Oh, I don't care. Listen, none of that bothers me, Andrew. I'm not, listen, the guests that we've had on, we've had targets on our back already. I'll add another one. But, I do agree with you. I think burners should really differentiate themselves from firearms. And I think that's a good criticism. If the CEO of Burner happens to listen to this, none of us are telling you that your product's bad. Just don't make it look like a gun so that your people don't get killed.
The trouble I have is I don't have a good recommendation for them. I mean, guns look the way they do because that shape works.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I get it. I understand. It's not just marketing reasons Byrna chose that shape. It's because it's what people are accustomed to.
Yeah.
It's an efficient way to aim something like that. That's why guns are, shaped that way. So if I had an easy shape to give them and say, why don't you do it this way? I would do that, but I don't.
I feel like I would go with coloring and maybe make it a little oblong, right? Like something different colored, and instead of it being like a pistol, maybe make it like, but it would be hard to conceal. So I think coloring may be the best way to do it. Make it fluorescent instead of any sort of black, like looking like a Glock or anything. I don't know, but I understand your concerns, and then I agree. And even though I think it's a cool product, you kind of swayed me. Damn it. Anyway, so. Before, I don't want to hold you forever, but I do want to talk about some of the famous national cases that you talked about extensively on, YouTube and things like that. And cases like the Kyle Rittenhouse case, the Daniel Perry case, the Kyle Carruth case.
We could also add the Daniel Penny case because
we could add
between Perry and Penny. There's two different cases.
Yes, the Daniel Penny case. So let's start with the Kyle Rittenhouse case.
All right. The lesson of the Kyle Rittenhouse case is this: you could be acting perfectly lawfully, and Kyle Rittenhouse was.
Yes.
But remember, what you think was reasonable is not what determines your legal outcome. Mm-hmm. It's the police, the prosecution, the judge, the jury. And if you commit a perfectly lawful act in a jurisdiction that's become politically energized, particularly if it's hard left, those people don't care what the truth is, especially if there's a long period of time between your defensive act and the trial. If it's a year, 13 months, they've had all that time where they are being ruthlessly propagandized and brainwashed by the media to the point where you can't get an impartial jury. Yeah. In fact, one of the arguments in the Rittenhouse case was to move the jurisdiction of the trial to somewhere else in the state, and the judge declined. For, I think, a good reason, and that is it doesn't matter where in the state I move it, it's going to be the same because that's how thoroughly the case was propagandized. And I think he was right about that. Now, what I would say, if I were the judge, is I would say, well, if the state, because that was the state's argument, and the judge bought it, I would have told the state, well, if you're telling me that you cannot provide this defendant with an unbiased jury anywhere in the state, I'm dismissing the charges.
It should have been
because if you can't give someone a fair trial, you shouldn't give him any trial at all.
Now, should there be, and Dave, I'm going to let you go in a second.
Go ahead,
Should there be kind of like, and I know this would be damn near impossible, but there should be kind of like a press gag order on some of these major cases, right? Where
you don't want that.
It won't work. And I don't know if we want that because we want the freedom of the press, but it kind of sucks for a case like Kyle Rittenhouse where, and Donald Trump is going through this right now with some of his cases where he's such a high profile individual. He will never get a fair trial by jury, basically.
Yeah, but the bad stuff the political stuff will always leak. So the political bad actors, they're connected to the media. They'll just leak stuff and that'll get out there anyway. So if there's a gag order, it only gags the defendant.
That's
really.
True. That's true.
And that means that there's no way for people like me to counter argue against the propaganda because I don't have access to any of the actual evidence.
Makes sense.
So gag orders are a bad thing in these politicized cases.
Gotcha. David,
I was going to say the Rittenhouse case seems like one of those examples of when you have just a plethora of video evidence of what happened that night. That I mean, I don't know if you agree, but I think that probably helped Rittenhouse the most. Especially, I mean, it was streamed during that time at night. Like you could see basically everything that happened with Rittenhouse.
People saw what they wanted to see.
Yes.
From it, right? So he did he shoot the guy who hit him with the skateboard? I think he did, right?
Yeah,
I can't remember if he missed him. Shot at him at least.
I think he hit him because he was on his back, and that's the one that he shot from his back.
The skateboard was the one he killed. He was the second one he killed.
Yes.
Okay. Right. The kicking guy he missed. Right. The guy who tried to stomp him.
Yes. The kicking guy he missed. Yes.
Right. So the people who say, well, skateboard, I have a skateboard. I roll around on skateboards. That's not a deadly weapon. You hit someone in the head with a big skateboard. It may as well be a baseball bat. It's
Those metal
absolutely
trucks
a deadly
can
weapon.
absolutely kill you 100% too.
But people get politically energized. We're all in our tribes, right?
Yeah.
And one tribe, there's no way. So occasionally I speak at the FBI Academy about these cases. And I'll look at that audience. It's a big auditorium at Quantico. 300 senior FBI agents, law enforcement from all over the country. And I talk about these cases. And I'm like, listen, I believe a lot of you have misperceptions about these cases because the media lies to you. You weren't investigators on them yourselves. You're in different jurisdictions. And I'll say, how many people believe that X happened in this case? And every hand goes up because they read it in the media 1,000 times. And then I'll show them incontrovertible evidence that could not have happened. And maybe half those people will change their minds. The other half have so emotionally committed to their position that their faces just go blank. I can see it in the audience. So we have to remember, humans, we like to think we're rational creatures. We're really not. There's a few particular professions where you really have to be very rational, physics, law. But most people are not rational. We just go about our normal day and we try to be as rational as we need to for like our work life. But we're not really rational. We're really emotional. And especially, unless you're a lawyer like me, you're not following these cases closely. All you know about them is what you read in the news. You come to an opinion that's usually consistent with whatever the news is telling you. And there's no reason for you to change your mind after that. This defendant's not a friend of yours. You're not personally involved in the case. And once you've made that emotional investment in that particular narrative, it's almost impossible to change your mind.
And no one likes to get their worldview shattered, right? It's very hard that you've been
very unusual
invested in this, and now you're being told it's wrong. And and it doesn't matter where you go. If you're in the conservative mediascape, they're telling you, "Hey, we got all the evidence. We're being honest." You go into the leftist mediascape, they're saying the same thing, and you kind of pick and choose where you want to go. And I think the best way to be honest about it is, both of them are telling you mostly what they want you to know. Now, I'm a little biased on the conservative side. I grew up a Rush baby, and one of the things Rush always said was, I know what the left is going to say before the left says it because we have to. Because conservatives need to know what leftists are going to say.
And of course, that's what lawyers have to do too, right? I mean, lawyers have to be prepared for the other side's argument. So exactly, everyone thinks they're a critical thinker. You're not, folks. You're not. Because what critical thinking really means is you can be as critical about your own position as you can be on the other side's position. For lawyers, we do that. Good lawyers. We do that because we have to be prepared for the attacks on our arguments. But maybe 2 or 3% of the population are genuinely critical thinkers where they're as hard on their own position as they are on the other sides.
Yeah, I've said it before on the show. If you're not trying to break down whatever you believe, if you're not trying to read something, or the people like David knows, I famously, if I hate something, I go and I read all the experts on the other side, or the people, just to kind of I was told my whole life in high school, communism's bad. They never told me why. They told me Cold War. They told me McCarthy. Boom. That's kind of it. I took it upon myself to read the Communist Manifesto, everything Karl Marx and things about China. And I've come back with the idea that communism's worse than bad. It fucking sucks and we should destroy it. But I now have a rational position for why, right? And I think that's...
By the way, at the same time, you could imagine a scenario in which you might say, the first communists, maybe they thought they had something. I mean, we didn't know then. We didn't yet have 150 million people shot in trenches, right? So it all sounds good. It's a very feminine philosophy, right? Everybody is happy and everybody.
And it's immature. Along. It's a very immature philosophy. It's
right. Well, feminine. By feminine, I really mean childlike. But
I love you, Andrew.
So it sounds good. It sounds great, right? We just know in practice it doesn't work. And today we know that because we have tens of millions of dead people to show for it. So I would actually distinguish between the first communists, who were still wrong on the merits, but maybe they had an argument because we didn't have the counter evidence yet.
Yeah.
I would distinguish between them and someone who claims to be a communist today. You're just a serial killer.
Yeah. And, and the thing is, the tell is they go for utopia. Utopia means nowhere. They have no direction. They have nothing that they're actually trying to achieve. They just know what they know. They have a concept of what they're trying to achieve, but they have no means on how to actually get there. Besides, let's just try this and let's keep trying and let's keep trying. And
the thing is, it actually becomes more attractive over time, right? Because as we become a wealthier society, there's no poor people in America today, right? All the poor people have $100 sneakers and $1,000 cell phones and big screen TVs. All right, there's no really poor people in America anymore. And so it begins to feel like, well, yeah, sure. Why can't everybody have everything? I've got a lot, but I don't have as much as that dude. Look at his house, right? Look at his car, right? I'm not driving a Tesla X Plaid. I'm driving a Honda Accord. Why don't I have a Tesla S Plaid?
Yep.
And so the more, and of course, then politicians come along and say, well, if I just tell people I can give them stuff, they'll vote for me and I'll have political power and then I will be able to give them stuff. And it becomes a self-feeding cycle, which I think, unfortunately, is the death spiral we're in today. The moment you give people the opportunity to vote other people's money into their pocket,
they're going to do it.
When they're a small portion of the population, you can kind of afford it. It's like a relative with a drug addiction. You still invite them to Thanksgiving. You don't want them living with you, but you might still invite them to Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But once that percentage of the population gets large enough, it's over. It's just a death spiral after that.
So I want to jump to, David mentioned the Daniel Penny case, the individual that, intervened.
So we're talking New York?
We're talking New York City
subway, right? Okay,
New York City
I get them
subway.
confused too.
Yeah, the Perry and Penny, they are confusing. But the Daniel Penny one where he, the individual was threatening the whole entire train car. I'll go back to jail. I'll kill everyone here. And, he's a former Marine. He put the guy in a chokehold and, he put him in the recovery position, which is what you're supposed to do, an appropriate position, and tried to resuscitate the individual when he realized that there was something wrong. A lot of that got left out or intentionally left out. If you were somebody consulting, or I don't know if you did consult on that case or not, but if you were somebody that what would have been your way to defend him? Because he kind of puts the kibosh, I guess, on anyone in New York City ever trying to help again.
Right. So I did not consult on the case. If I had, I wouldn't be able to talk about it. But I did consult on a choke. Yeah. I did consult I was an expert witness on a chokehold case, very similar, just here in Colorado last year. And the first thing I would say about so I studied jiu-jitsu myself. So I was choked today in class. Today. I was being choked. And I will tell you that does not look like a chokehold to me. It looks like I would call like a seatbelt restraint. So he's just maintaining control over him. But a chokehold on the neck, if you've ever looked at MMA or any kind of, that dude
David did
being
MMA
choked.
for a little bit.
I mean, right. Yeah. And if he was being choked, it wouldn't last for 10 minutes.
No,
I mean, that's not how chokes.
Minutes. You go limp within maybe
6 seconds. You're unconscious, right? Yeah. And in 3 minutes, you're dead.
Yeah.
And so he that's not what happened. He was just restraining him. I don't believe he was choking him at all. And Daniel says when he's interviewed, he says, I wasn't choking him at all. I was just restraining him for when we're just waiting for the cops to arrive. So I don't even think there was a choke. Now, the case I consulted on, there definitely was a choke. The defendant choked the dude and the dude died. And of course, the state said, well, you strangled him to death. That's just murder. And the defendant was saying, no, man, the defendant studied jiu-jitsu at my gym, actually. That's how I got involved in the case.
Wow.
Although I'd never met him. But he said, no, I just put a choke on him for like a few seconds and he lost consciousness and he just never woke up. Now, the dude who died in the case I consulted on, he was a lifelong alcoholic. In fact, his blood alcohol level, you know what the blood alcohol level for DWI is probably in New York?
It's 0.01.
Yeah.
I think is it that low? Normally,
I think it went down to 0.0. It was 0.08. Wow. I think they dropped it to 0.01.
All right. Most states it's 0.08. 0.08. Yeah. This dead guy's blood alcohol level was 0.458.
My God.
All right. 30% alcohol. Holy shit.
So, well, half of a percent alcohol. But for a normal person, you'd be in a coma or dead. Yeah. Right. But this guy was a lifelong alcoholic, and that was probably his normal blood alcohol level. But what I find is, so like I say, I studied jiu-jitsu. I got choked today. I did not die, right, from the choke. In jiu-jitsu gyms all over the world, thousands of people are getting choked every day. Nobody dies.
Yep.
But those people are healthy students of jiu-jitsu. And I suspect what's really happening in these cases is that these chokes, that lots of these guys, like Daniel in the Marines, was told how to choke someone, but he was choking another 20-year-old Marine, another healthy dude. I think a lot of these chokes that are demonstrably harmless against relatively healthy people, when you put them or anything like them, any kind of physiological stress on someone who's profoundly physiologically broken because lifelong alcohol addiction or drug addiction, sometimes those people under the physiological stress, they just turn off. They just turn off. And it's really got nothing to do with any reasonable because you don't know they're a drug addict when you put the choke on them, or an alcoholic, right? Daniel didn't know. This guy was just acting weird and threatening people. And I think he's just in an unfortunate position where he was doing what he thought would be really harmless. And the dude just died. And now he's in this unfortunate position where, because he's white, the dude's black. Again, it shouldn't matter, but that's the world we live in. The politics of New York, that particular, a George Soros prosecutor, and he can present it to the public as, look, it's another racist white guy murdering a helpless black guy. It's a terrible political narrative for the defense. It's not a legal narrative. I mean, on the legal merits, I think he's clearly a lawful use of non-deadly force in self-defense. Again, I don't even think it was a choke of any sort. But even if it was any kind of choke, I think the only reason that dude died was because of his own physiology, not because of anything that Daniel Penny did.
And the thing with Daniel Penny, too, it's also the climate that it happened in, right? It was, St. Floyd had happened, and all the things were going on. And Barack Obama stirred up racial tensions, almost 16 years ago, 12 years ago, with the Michael Brown stuff and everything. Yeah, it's been like 12 years since Barack Obama, 16. It's been a long time. Yeah. So, but, it's he stirred up a lot of this. And a lot of people say Trump divided everyone. Nope. I'm sorry, Barack Obama divided everybody. He's the one that started all this shit by saying the police acted stupidly in Cambridge and
if I had a son, and
then a white Hispanic, which I guess me and David, we're Ecuadorian, we'd be white Hispanics if shit hit the fan, which is not a actual qualification at all.
They would darken your photos in the news media. That's what they did to Zimmerman.
Yep. Yeah. Oh yeah. They would.
They would whiten them.
They would whiten them. Yeah. It's so ridiculous, and it's just. Yeah, like you said, and it's politically charged, and I think
George Zimmerman in real life, he looks rather Central American. I mean, his skin tone, it's not black, but it's dark, and in the news they bleached him completely in the news media.
And I don't think they could handle that. What was it, like a year later, he saved somebody from like a burning car or something, or like something happened and he saved someone. So it's like the guy that they were trying to destroy, who, you can argue the legal merits, whatever of that case, but the guy they tried to destroy saved somebody, and I think they reported with the teeth gritted when they reported that one. But overall, it's tough in these cases, especially where we are now in the climate. It is difficult to do the right thing sometimes, where you have to hope that in America, you still want to do the right thing. And we see it all the time. In New York City,
what's do the right thing mean? Does that mean intervene in someone else's fight?
Intervene. If you see a woman being raped in freaking New York City, go stop it. If you see some person punch a fucking old Asian woman or shove somebody into train tracks, go and interfere. Don't just film it. Do something. And we need more people like you, to be quite honest, Andrew. We need more people that are consulting on these cases and giving enough expertise.
Okay. I would caution people about intervening.
I know you would, but
getting into fights you don't need to get into. Now, this
is the non-lawyer.
Someone's pushed on the tracks.
Go help them.
help them get off the tracks. That's fine. You see, any kind of man-woman fight. I've seen so many cases where somebody intervenes. They're saving a damsel in distress, and it turns out that's the baby mama of the dude. And when the cops show up, or when it's got to go to court, suddenly she's saying, "You were the problem. He wasn't the problem. He's the father of my children. I love him. The only time I was scared was when this dude showed up with a gun." And now you're getting prosecuted. Yeah. So are there edge cases where it's obvious, there's like a school shooting or a mall shooting where it's completely unambiguous who the bad actor is? Sure. But a lot of these cases, it's either ambiguous in the moment or it can be made to look ambiguous after the moment. And keep in mind, the penalties if I point a gun at someone, never fire a shot, never hurt anybody, merely point a gun at them to change their behavior. And that's not lawful. You know what that is? That's aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. That's good for 20 years in prison in most states. So when we say intervene, again, I don't tell people what to do. Do whatever you want. I just want you to make an informed decision. So for all the I want to protect other people folks out there who are walking around with a gun, just keep in mind, the moment that gun comes out, you don't have to shoot anybody to be looking at 20 years in prison.
Yeah. And I get it from a legal perspective. It's not great advice to say intervene and help people all the time, especially now. Especially now. But I guess it's like
By the way, those other people you're trying to help, why didn't they bring their gun?
in New York, they don't have them probably.
No, I understand, but you wouldn't either then.
Yeah.
But in jurisdictions where people can conveniently get a concealed carry permit, that person could have gotten their concealed carry permit. They could have done what I did my entire adult life, got the permit, learned how to use it, carried a gun every day, as inconvenient as it can be, especially in hot weather, and been prepared to defend myself. Why is their failure to prepare themselves for a fundamental adult duty, right? Be able to protect yourself from criminal predation, yourself, your family, your property. Why is their failure to do that my problem? I got 4 kids. I don't want to go to jail for 20 years because they didn't prepare for what we all know is an increasingly violent society.
Yeah, and that's an absolutely good point. And that's why you're a lawyer and I'm just a dude that talks on a podcast and doesn't give good law advice, just gives emotional yelling into my mic advice.
In fairness, I've had multiple decades to think about this stuff.
So maybe decades ago, you would have probably been a little more in agreement with me, but maybe not.
I definitely made poorer decisions when I was younger. I do have a bad first marriage.
That happens. Hopefully mine stays solid. I'm in my first one and hopefully it stays that way.
God bless.
The fingers crossed. I still like my wife. Hopefully she still likes me. We'll find out in due time. But before we jump out of here, David, you always have a non sequitur. Do you have one dialed up and ready to go for our guests?
Yes. For the last year, 2023, do you have a favorite piece of media, whether it's a movie, TV show, or anything? I don't know if you watch at all, a lot, but if you could remember what you watched that came out in 2023, if you have a favorite, then I would love to hear it. But if you just watched something in 2023 you really liked and you didn't like anything from 2023, you can give me that instead.
I gotta say I don't have a good answer. I'm so sorry, dudes. But for one thing, I'm kind of old, so all my like life high media experiences are generally from my youth. I don't really watch the media anymore. We don't really have a TV in the house, for example, just for the kids. The movies all suck.
That's completely fair. That's why I was like, maybe.
Do you have a so what's your favorite of all time? I'll put you on the spot there. Do you have a favorite movie of all time?
Oh, it's so hard. I'm so bad at these favorite things. There's probably be like a top 10 kind of thing. But like I saw, for example, the original Star Wars movie. I saw it in the theater the night it came out. First night it opened, 1977. Yeah. The Godfather movies I really like those. Now, when I was a young man, I worked as a diesel mechanic in Harlem, New York, of all places, 125th Street and First Avenue, when Harlem was not a very nice place. Yeah. And it was the garbage trucks is mostly what we worked on. Of course, the garbage industry was completely controlled by the mafia. So I met a lot of those guys on a routine basis, and they were not anything like the Godfather movies. They were psychopaths. They were bad dudes. They were awful. Yep. But the Godfather movie itself, I like just as an art form. It's not at all reflective of what the mafia was really like, but it's entertaining. It's great. All the actors are great. Yeah. So I could pick some movies like that. But in terms of 2023, I got to say nothing really comes to mind. Even stuff like probably the one of the most recent movies I really liked was like the first Iron Man movie, the very first one. But even Marvel, the first, the emergence of the Marvel universe, really, right? With that, oh my God, he was so good. Downey was so good. It was amazing. But since then, it's gone the shitter.
100%. Especially recent movies have been extra awful.
Since Marvel Disney became a thing, it's been god awful. So, Dave, do you have a favorite from 2023?
If I were going to recommend a couple things, it was a couple TV shows. They're not new. One of them is Strike Back. It was a Cinemax.
I heard that one. That was good.
Strike Back basically is about a couple kind of mercenaries. Now, I will say the writing's not great. Every show's basically the same. I can never remember one show from the other. Yeah. But the gun handling in that TV series is absolutely world class. I say that with some authority. I've never been a cop. I've never been a soldier, but I did for 15 years. I taught at the 6 Hour Academy in New Hampshire. They do a lot of military training. Because I was an instructor, they would let me take whatever courses I wanted. I'm not saying I'm a world-class gun handler, but I've seen world-class gun handling. And the gun handling in that TV show, forget every other TV show you've ever seen. It's all garbage. That TV show, Strike Back, the gun handling is amazing.
That's awesome.
The other show I really liked a lot was Banshee. Have you seen that? Banshee is basically a story about a crook who gets released from prison, goes to find his fellow thieves who took all the money when he got caught, and he ends up in a small town as the sheriff in that small town. He's faking someone else's identity, and it's pretty good.
That's interesting. So, one thing I would possibly recommend for you to watch, since you like gunplay, is possibly the John Wicks. Have you seen the John Wick movies? Because
of course, I've seen them all. The first one was great. The first one I really liked.
I like them. I like the action in them all, and I just enjoy the fact that Keanu Reeves actually goes through the effort of learning how to hold the weapons and use them, and so I do like the John Wick. So
his gun handling in the first John Wick movie, the others I didn't like so much. They became too
cartoony,
comic book for me. Yeah, but the first one, the gun handling is really too good. It's too precise. I mean, he got it too perfect. That's everything is like someone who's practiced, karate and then kata and got the kata perfect. That's what it looks like to me. But it's great. It's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, they're great. So, Dave, do you have a favorite in 2023?
I think you already know it. Godzilla -1.
Yep.
I think the writing in is fantastic.
Oh, I've heard great things about it. I haven't.
Were you a Godzilla fan back in the day?
No, I really wasn't. But I'm hearing such fantastic reviews about this one.
Are you fine with subtitles?
Yeah, I guess so. I can read.
Yeah, because it's a Japanese production. It's all subtitles. So, but its writing's fantastic. The human element is actually a good story. You root for these people, and it's Godzilla looks amazing. Honestly, on a $15 million budget, apparently the director said it was less. He looks incredible. Even if you see it off the trailers, like he looks just as good as he does in those. So I recommend it 1,000 times over.
I'll just be quick with mine. It's a show because I'm a giant nerd. One Piece. The Netflix One Piece is really good. Good action, faithful to the Japanese adaptation. So if you didn't notice, Andrew, we are both nerds with Japanese stuff. But but that's my recommendation. But Andrew, thank you so much for coming on. This was a blast and honestly an education.
Yes.
A class, and I really enjoyed it. And I think anybody that listens to it would enjoy it. So anything else besides the book, your YouTube channel, Twitter, anything else you want to plug? How can people find you?
The main thing I would tell people to take advantage of is our free book offer, which is lawofselfdefense.com/free book. Just get the book, folks. The book, you can look at it on Amazon, 5-star rated, bestseller in its class, but don't buy it on Amazon because they'll charge you, I think, $20 or $25 for the book, plus shipping and handling. We do ask you to cover the cost of shipping the book to you, a few bucks, but the cost of the book itself is free if you get it at lawofselfdefense.com/free book.
Awesome. And I'll plug your YouTube. Go look it up on YouTube. He's a great subscription. Go subscribe. You won't be disappointed. Go follow him on Twitter. He's also funny on Twitter at times too, and he gives his commentary. So you'll enjoy it. If you like what you heard here today, give us a like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars, Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth. Go find us on the socials at the Alex Cuesta Show. And we will be back next week for another fun show. Thank you everyone for listening. So long, y'all.